Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Good evening. How you doing, everybody? How are you today? Hope everyone is doing well. What's going on, my friends? Got a bit to talk about today. I want to talk, of course, about the midfield. Talk about Elliot Anderson. Some of the stuff we've been talking about the last couple of weeks being confirmed by Andy Mitten, as well as other top individuals there. But obviously we've got, we're working on a midfield. We're working on Elliot Anderson. We want two midfielders. We want all of that. We want all of that. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the plans. And I also want to talk about something, a little bit of a weird one, because I want to specifically talk about Conor Gallagher. We sort of spoke about it the other day as kind of a, but why? And I think I figured it out. I think I figured it out. Maybe. I have an idea, and I want to discuss why we might want Conor Gallagher. If we do, because we did try for him, and if we and I'm definitely hearing there's a possibility we might try for him again. And I just wonder, and I've got ideas. I've got ideas on what it might actually be for. And if I'm right on this, then I would be much more interested in the idea than I was previously, even though it's a weird one because I like the player. So we'll talk about that. We will also talk about what else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about some of the youth types of things. We're going to talk about some of the youth and the plans as a sort of the plan with Shea Lacey has been kind of confirmed. And I think we can talk about that in terms of AFCON and how he's going to be involved likely during that period in time. So yeah, we're getting into a little bit of like transfer season. I want to talk about Andy Mitten's quotes in there. So I've got an agenda here. I've got an agenda in here in terms of the overall plan of discussion, things we want to talk about, and all of that. But yeah, I hope that people who haven't been keeping up are following now, because in the last couple of weeks we've been saying a lot.
Did you see Ronaldo's comments?
Yeah.
Is this man 3 years behind on his news?
I think he might be, Alfred. He doesn't seem to have any idea what's going on at United in terms of, when you mean specifically the comments like about structure and things like that, right? Like, sir, we've ripped out the entire club, redid Carrington. We got the hot tubs finished, my man. Take a trip over there, take a visit, check it out. We fixed it all up. We fixed it all up. It's all different, Ronnie. Give it a try. Go check it out for yourself. Go see. Clearly, he's not totally up to date on what's actually going on at United right now. So yeah. So there's that. But yes, if people haven't been keeping up on the news, I hope they do now, because we've been talking about multiple midfielders. We've been talking about Anderson. I had some news on that a few weeks ago, so I want to get that back shortly. Yes, Sekou Kone is also finally back with the under-21. So we're gonna talk about that. Let me just make another tweet. If you guys are around, if you guys are just coming in now, please do drop a like on the video. If you're on Twitter or anywhere, give us a retweet, things like that. The posts, everything helps. We need to. It's a quiet season on YouTube for this business. October, November is rough. Anything helps in terms of your support, likes, just the things you can do with a simple click of the button that help, get the word out there, get our name out there, and keep us working on the algorithm and all that, especially with how few games we have, and we're not in the Champions League, and you've got these big matches and things like that. All right, let me just tweet really quick, and then we'll get right into it. Right. Cool. Okay. Here we go. Let's get into the news. Let's start spreading the news. Yes, and again, the poll. Let's do the poll because it does help. If it weren't for the eye-watering amount of debt I'm in, I would. But you can just click the like button. You know what I mean? That's all you got to do. That's all I'm asking for. And hype the video. Oh yeah, there's a hype button too. I have no idea what that hype thing is, but there's a new hype thing. So let's get the hype, whatever that hype thing is, going at the moment. No, I don't rate Anderson as too many votes, even for the first few people. What is wrong with you guys? All right. Let's get into it, my friends. Let's talk about the news here. So starting, of course, I want to look at some of the quotes that were sort of there from Andy Mitten. And I think maybe a little bit out of context to some degree in what was being stated by Andy Mitten. Because I listened and I think they were even kind of joking about it being taken in a way from aggregators. But here's how it was taken, at least, or how it was said. Elliot Anderson is the midfielder who would be well positioned to join Manchester United at the moment. Okay, and here's the what I think he's really saying. All right, here's what I think he's really saying at the moment. Okay, I think that he's saying, and he said he was being careful with his wording or intentional with his wording and things like that. Look, a few weeks back, I'll get to my info in a minute when we get to the Anderson section, but I think really what he's saying here, what he confirmed was two things, that we want two midfielders. Yeah, we want two midfielders, and I think maybe what you can take from him talking about is that Elliot Anderson is somebody who might be sort of there in the radar. Now, the last time Talk of the Devils spoke on the midfield, they also said the Baleba thing was parked at the moment. I think, am I correct in saying that I think some people have stated, have probably heard that as well on the last time they spoke, that Baleba thing was parked at the moment. Okay, so there's Andy Mitten's quotes, but I think some of it is a little bit out of context, a little bit taken maybe too far from what he's saying, but at the same time, maybe it's not. Stuart with the 10 gifted memberships to the community. Man, you are such a legend. I appreciate your support always. For me, for everybody. Hey, look, 50. You got one there. I really, really appreciate that, Stuart. It's incredibly meaningful that you're always here to support, to back me and the channel and everything like that, and we'll keep doing what we do over here. So 10 memberships to the community. There you go, guys. For those of you who don't have one, thank you so much for that. Back in the elite, thank you. Yeah, get green names again, all of that. Thank you so much, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart. Really, really, really appreciate it. I'll keep doing it. So yes, so that's what Andy was saying. So let's talk about what that actually means. Two midfielders. So we've been talking about this a lot recently. If I think very specifically about last week or maybe even a little before that, I did a couple of videos and lives here talking with you guys and saying, look, we want two midfielders in this summer. And I want to discuss with you guys what that means, that we want two midfielders, because we do. We want two midfielders. This was also confirmed on Talk of the Devils that we want two midfielders. Now, what does this say for the future of the midfielders who are presently at the club? If we take a look at it, we've got some young players we want to come through. Let's not forget, we also just bought Christian Orozco, who is set to arrive in summer. Now, is he young? Could he probably be in the youth team for most of the year to settle in, like maybe Kone, Leon have, things like that? Yes. At the same time, is he potentially more ready than the other guys? Also potentially, yes. But either way, what we will not end up having is 6 senior midfielders plus all of those youth players for those two positions. We've got Bruno, Casemiro, Ugarte, Mainoo right now as senior midfielders. Who's leaving? Who is leaving? And right now, I think it's very, very unclear, but I'll run through my understanding of the situation as of present. For Casemiro, there have yet been no talks over extending his contract. There has been nothing about it. Is it a thought? Is it something that that he might think about? Is it something that they may consider? Yes. But have they actually approached it to have discussions? No. And a big part of that is, of course, that under no circumstances are they looking to keep Casemiro on at his present wage and contract, which is extremely, of course, high. It's way too high. So he would not only have to show some willingness to accept a much, much reduced deal on a short-term thing, but I also think in general, they're more likely to still move on from Casemiro at the end of the season, at least as of today. When you look at the situation, they like Casemiro, they want Casemiro, they have Casemiro, but they don't necessarily, but he's not going to be a starter. They need to sign his replacement, right? They want to sign his replacement 100% in that respect. And so it becomes a matter of, is he the type of player you use coming off of the bench to make an impact? Or, you know, when you're talking about he's more of a settled player where you're looking at him saying, well, he's starting all the time right now, even though his legs aren't really there, because he's a good player to build up into games, to warm up, to get things going, to settle in. I don't think Casemiro's probably got the type of profile as an impact sub, in my opinion. I'm not, maybe, you know, you have some of the set pieces thing. There are concerns still, of course, at present as of his, about his, you know, about, of course, his fitness and his legs. Not that he's not fit, because he is, but it is factually observed that he has a limited number of minutes in him each game, and he tends to slow down quite a bit after that. And everything as well. So Casemiro, I think at this point, still likely to leave with his replacement. Should Mainoo stay or go? Again, like these lives. Yes, thank you, Naveen. And that's the next one I wanna talk about as well here. By the way, on this Amram Dallo thing, this was said by somebody last week, a Portuguese paper or something like that, saying that they're related. Now you have to realize they're related like great grandparents. And all I want to say on that is, even though I know that it's a funny thing with him constantly picking Dallo and something I'm questioning every single day. At the same time, you have to realize one thing. Now, Luckhurst just confirmed it. It was already reported last week. Because I saw it last week originally. If you take a small country like Portugal, let's forget Portugal. If you look at sports in general, you will be shocked at how many people are related by some distant relative in sports. Like, absolutely shocked. If you go up, even just look in general, take a smaller country like Portugal. If you have the same area,
and with Neville's weird agenda against Sesko, he supplied no context, such as a lack of pre-season, and claims he cost £80 million.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in the second, Joe, because I totally agree with you. But if you take a small area and you go up like 4 generations, you're going to find a lot of people related. In sports as well, if you dig into it, a ton of people are related. So this is like the least meaningful imaginable thing. I promise you there's a ton of people who are related in sports. I bet you could find a bunch of people in England who are related to each other. Like there's crazy relations all over the place, all sorts of stuff like that. So I wouldn't overthink that too much, even though it is kind of funny. It is kind of funny. It's not like they're cousins or like even second cousins. We're talking really distant. Like, that family tree probably has over hundreds of people in it. And if you're from anyway, it's all good, but it's hilarious. I'd be surprised if you didn't. Yeah. If you went back a little bit, I'd be surprised if Mourinho, Bruno, like if there wasn't relations between a lot of people. But in sports, this happens all the time. If you look at like the NBA and the NFL and stuff, tons of stuff like that all the time as well. It's crazy. to answer that thing on Neville, and then we'll get back to the midfielders and walk through the other three, because we talked about Casemiro. Neville's been like this for a while, and it kind of drives me nuts here a little bit, okay? Because it's not like the Šeško thing. I criticized him in terms of, I thought he was really bad against Forest. And I do mean that. I genuinely mean that. I think Šeško was really, really bad against Forest. That's it. I'm not going to take it further than that. I'm not going to say he's been shit since he's arrived. I'm not going to say that means he's a bad player. I'm not going to say it's a failure. I'm not going to say he hasn't got it here or something like that. I'm not going to say any of those things. He was just poor against Forest. Neville definitely, and I pointed that out as well, like, he constantly takes it so far with every criticism. Even when he's watching the game, it'll be like a clear penalty, and he'll be like, "Oh, that's not a foul at all." It's not like, he goes so far into, he's been doing this for years, into like trying to not be biased for United, that he's actually just kind of being a cunt towards United in general. That's what he ends up being, when he should be supporting and backing the players and fans and things like that a bit more. You know, it's like, and he's been doing it for a long time. And yeah, things like misquoting the price and things like that are just like, why is it necessary? Why is it necessary? You know what I mean? And it's like, but it always happens. It's only like when we lose, then suddenly these things pop up, or when we even don't win in a tough away game, it pops up. I've watched Neville and Carragher, and I've said it hundreds of times. Jamie Carragher is way more fair to United than Gary Neville is. Like, he's a 10 times better pundit than Neville for United. Now, Jamie Carragher is a super biased for Liverpool, which you'd expect. But for United, he's good. He's good. You know what I mean? Neville doesn't have, Carragher at least, like, I'm not like defending Carragher's character here for certain things, obviously, like that, right? But I always noticed that Jamie Carragher, when he talks about United, he's quite fair most of the time in his analysis and things like that. For Liverpool, he's incredibly biased.
Said Matthijs de Ligt is aging.
Neville is crazy. That's crazy. De Ligt is aging. But Neville is like the reverse bias against United to the exact opposite. So Jamie will be really positive towards Liverpool, way too positive, but at least he's balanced on United. Then you have Neville, who's just a cunt to United and then praises everybody else. I don't get it. If you're going to be like, I don't know. I don't know what the reason is for that. I really, really don't. But I've enjoyed watching a fair bit of sometimes what Carragher says when he talks about United. Sometimes he's also over the top because it's just Sky and things like that. And everybody likes to make a big thing attacking United. So it's super weird. Super weird. I don't get it. I don't listen to any of them much. There's been times I have, and for the most part, I've tuned out of pretty much any punditry and listening and watching videos and things. I watched the American show, the show on in the US on Paramount for the Champions League with Carragher, with Micah Richards, with Thierry Henry, because they're really funny. The whole thing is really funny. But not be for the quality of the analysis, but because it is actually, to me, pretty funny. But
Neville
whatever.
also only publicly criticized foreign players. He never criticized English players.
That may be so. I haven't noticed it as much. I don't really follow in that much detail, but yeah, maybe so. That might be true, which is frustrating. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything Carragher's done recently. I saw that he did an interview with Johnny Evans where Johnny Evans explained, the system and things like that. But yeah, I don't really watch any of the punditry anymore because I think it's crap. I watched the one on Paramount for entertainment because it's funny. It's just too funny to me. They're really, really funny. Micah Richards is really funny. I find him hilarious. It's sort of like you get the with him and Thierry Henry, you get like the straight man, funny man type of thing. It's a good balance. It's a really nicely done show. And yeah, it's like the Inside the NBA for you in the States who catch up with that. I find it really funny. So let's get back to the discussion at hand. But thank you for the questions, the donations, and thoughts. And I agree with all of you guys on the Neville thing. It is super weird to me. It's just over the top all the time. So yes, so we spoke about Casemiro. On Kobbie Mainoo, this one, yeah, Kate is a queen. She absolutely is. This one is look, the original plan for Kobbie Mainoo was for him to come through, continue to improve and grow.
I find it hilarious the industry keeps shoving Micah Richards next to all-time greats, lol.
I mean, when you put it that way, it is funny, but I think it's for entertainment value because he is a funny pundit, but obviously he's not in the same like bracket of accomplishment, but he is funny. But Kobbie, the original plan was, of course, to have him work in the team. Amram believes he should play more. Amram wants him to play more. But it is certainly, he does not see him, as we saw like with what happened against Brighton and things like that. He does not see him as like a 6 that can play next to Bruno in terms of the legs, the energy, the ground coverage, things like that. He's had those concerns. He wants him to speed up. He wants him to do different things in that respect. So he is very literally playing behind Bruno. If Bruno stays, I believe Kobbie Mainoo is going to be sold next year. So there's a real world where we have Casemiro and Kobbie are the two that leave next summer to be replaced. Are the two that he wants to be replaced. Why did he play next to Bruno then? Because he felt we at 3-0, it was a good time to get him on the pitch with Casemiro coming off and all of that, and went disastrously, and he had to get Ugarte on like pretty much immediately. So, he didn't sub him on when chasing a goal against Forest. But yeah, there's a world where it's Casemiro and Kobbie who leave if Bruno stays. This is obviously going to be able to change over the course of the season. But even then, with United, looking at 2 midfielders, what does that mean anyway? Let's say Bruno does leave. Let's say sounds. Oh, hold on. Maybe. Tell me if it picks up again. It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Maybe I am being unreasonable, but for me, letting Mainoo go is very anti-United. Feels like a club that has lost its soul.
I get that. I do get that. But the whole thing with the youth, and let me know, guys, if the microphone changes and all that, and it is an awkward kind of discussion, but I look at it and I go, who is he starting over? Because when you look at him play, and he hasn't got a lot of chances, and that's why it's complicated. This is definitely a question at the moment. If we're going to buy 2 midfielders anyway, he's going to have to be okay with being rotation. Is he okay with being rotation? That's the question. Let's say Bruno leaves and we buy 2 midfielders. They're very likely to be starters. And he's going to have to be rotation. I agree that there's an issue but like, I don't want us to sell our academy players just for the sake of it and things like that. And I think Kobbie has a lot of potential. And I think he needs to play more to fulfill that potential. But I do disagree with the notion that it has to do with a 2 or a 3 or something like that. let's take the Forest game, for example. Could Kobbie have done what Elliot Anderson did there? I don't think so. Doesn't have the legs or the energy or anything like that, unfortunately, right? My concern with him, and this is something that I think needs to develop. I think needs to develop because I think that people are, like, I think Kobbie has a ton of talent and is also overrated because people, with him having a ton of talent, I think people make kind of the assessment that he's already that good, and he's not. He's got a ton of talent, and he's really good at certain aspects of his game, are really, really good in terms of talent. I wouldn't play Kobbie in a 3-man midfield as a starter right now because he's slow. His intensity, things like that worry me at the moment. Tyson, welcome to the Pro Muppet, and thank you. I think that it's more than just the system. You know, I do. I think that the injuries that he had as well towards the end of Ten Hag's tenure did not help because it doesn't feel like he came back from those with the same kind of qualities and pace. Pep would, I don't think that's true at all. Especially with the direction that football is going. Who is he replace at City right now? He likes Pep. I don't want to get into it because I don't want to be like bashing Kobbie at all because that's not the idea. I think he's a really, really talented player who has a lot to grow. But he does still have a lot to grow. He has a lot to improve upon. And especially in the direction that football is going and the Premier League is going, we're getting bigger spaces, more intensity, more direct. And the question has to be asked, that the direction that football is going doesn't suit where his skill set is at right now. It just doesn't at the moment. It doesn't suit his skill set at the moment. He needs to add more to it, which this is not just here. I mean, I don't know if anybody saw the other day. Do you see Licha get DM mins? No, I don't think he'll be in the midfield at all because it's way too much work. I think Licha will play at left center back, but the midfield is way too much work.
If Omori ends up a failure and Mainoo is sold, United officials are going to have egg all over their faces.
Yeah, to a degree, but I don't think that that's the only issue. I think that it's still too... I think it's still too narrow to say it's everybody else's fault that he's not playing at the moment. Like... I feel like it's everybody else. You know, it can't. I'm sorry, but saying comparing Scholes, Pirlo, and Modric to Kobbie is such a bad argument. Scholes had insane passing range, Pirlo, insane passing range, and Modric is one of the best engines in football. So those are terrible comparisons. Terrible comparisons. If Kobbie had passing range, he would be playing in this team because you have to have one of two things. You have to have pace. And you have to have legs or you have to have range. You can't have neither, okay? Casemiro has range. Bruno has legs and range. Ugarte has legs. That's all he pretty much has. None of them, like Jimmy Thwaites has crazy passing range, okay? That's what would give him the best chance to get in. Why I see him being able to fit in more than them, okay? Not at 20, but Scholes didn't play at 20. He didn't play consistently till he was 22. So there can be time to develop. But we weren't saying the soul of the club was dead. And if Fergie, you know, is a failure and Scholes is whatever, you know, there's a lot of factors in this. I want him to stay. I want him to play. I want him to do more. But it's up in the air. And I think this is the fact of the matter, okay? This is the fact of the matter. No matter what happens, Kobbie's going to have to be okay with being a rotational player. And next season, if there's more, if there's more, I'm not justifying selling him. He's the one who wants to leave. Like I said, quit blaming everybody else for what he wants. He's the one who's not okay with being a rotational player right now. He's the one not okay with that, with being a rotational player. That's the problem we have at the moment. It's his camp constantly briefing about leaving every fucking week when he's not playing. Okay, it's not the club trying to sell him. That's never been the plan. Okay, so we have to listen, understand what's actually going on here. Don't talk to me about justifying Kobbie being sold. Talk to him about why he can't be a rotation player at 20 years old, right? He's a rotation player. We have one game a week. Suck it up. Earn your place. When you get your chances, take it. When you get your chances, take it. He is a rotational player. We're playing in the least number of games possible right at the moment. We're playing in the least games possible right at the moment. We're barely changing the starting 11 every single week. Barely changing. Okay? We will have a lot more games during the festive period. But he decided he wanted to go after 2 games. So don't give me the shit about he's not playing. He decided he wanted to go after 2 games and briefed a whole bunch of stuff and had meetings with the club about leaving after 2 games. So don't give me that. He was not okay with being a rotational player. It was 2 games into the season when this started. It was 2 games into the season when this started. So if you don't get it, I'm sorry, but you never will on that point. It was 2 games into the season when this all started. That was it. Just 2. Okay? So you don't know anything about the intentions there. And that's probably not helping his minutes at the moment. Okay? Then he started the next game and we lost. Okay? Like, it is what it is. It was 2 games into the season he asked to leave already because he wasn't playing. Okay? So these things happened. I'm not going to get into the player versus manager versus coach versus all of this stuff because it's stupid. We've lost better players. We've let better players go. We've sold better players in the past. If players want to stay, if players want to leave, it is what it is. With Kobbie, the hope is and the plan is to keep him. But he's going to have to be okay being a rotational player. That's what he's going to have to be okay with. He'll have to be a rotational player. Okay? That's what he's going to have to accept. He's rotation. Next year, he'll be rotation too, until he's at a level where he deserves to be a starter and is playing at the level of a starter. Okay, so he's behind Bruno. He's 20 years fucking old. Where would he be if he joined City? At any big club, where would he be? That's what you get when you join a big club. When you play at a big club. When you play at Real Madrid, would he start? If he was playing at Barcelona, would he start? If he was playing at City, would he start? If he was playing at Chelsea, would he start? No, he'd be behind somebody at every single club. Enzo Fernandez, Bruno Fernandes, I don't know, Bellingham. It doesn't matter. He'd be behind a good player at every single big club because that's what happens at big clubs. They have top talents. And when you're a young player, you have to be okay with being behind those players. But outside, so you have to say, all right, is your ambition... Phil Foden is not a nailed-on starter at City, and he's done a lot more. He's won titles and done all sorts of things, okay? So outside of you have to step outside of the big 4, outside of the big 6, in order to be a player where you're going to be starting regularly. That's just the fact of it. But when you're at a big club and you're a young player, you have to accept that rotation happens. Lenny Yoro is being rotated and is sometimes behind Harry Maguire in his, it's like shit happens. You know what I mean? Napoli and Bayern wanted him. No, sure. Okay. Of course. Yeah. And I'm sure he would be starting every game at Napoli, right? Not the players that got them to a Champions League final. Sure. So it is what it is. If he wants to start every week, join a mid-table club. That's it. That's what you've got to do. At a mid-table clubs, you still have to compete. But he's 20 years old. That's the difference. When you're 20, It is what it is. It's to me, it's still way too much for a 20-year-old. Way, 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 way too much talk about a 20-year-old. I mean, look at all the debate and everything that goes around on a 20-year-old. You know, that's it. You know, it is what it is. That's where we're at. So United want to keep him. I don't give a shit about this rotation argument at all. I literally don't. Okay. Yoro, maybe he's earning that rotation. Maybe Kobbie isn't. We don't know. You don't know. It was 2 games into the season when he asked to leave already. Okay. 2 games into the season. You know, it's clear. It's a very, very clear Amorim out agenda. I get it. Cool. Just admit it. Forget using Kobbie as your reasons to beat Amorim with a stick. Got it? We're done with that. We're past it. Amorim's going to be here, so you can get on board or not, because we're way past that discussion, okay? I know what the real reason for the argument is. We know what the real reason behind this whole discussion is. It's the system. It's the system. It's the Amorim. You want to build United around a 20-year-old? Good for you. But that's not going to happen at Manchester United. Not going to happen. That's how we end up with all these stupid mistakes that we've made for the last 10 years. Okay? So it doesn't matter. We're going to move on from that. If Kobbie is okay with being rotation, and look, guys, when you're playing 1 game a week, guess what happens? There's not a ton of rotation that is possible. There's not a ton of rotation that is possible when you're playing 1 game a week. Sometimes you have to just accept that that's where you are at this point in time. The schedule will be busier. Next year will be better. We should be back into Europe. We'll have more games, and there will be more games for rotation, and there will be more games for the whole squad. Ruben Amorim himself said that he's not getting enough minutes for these players, that these guys should be playing more. He said that himself. He's admitted himself. But we don't have enough games. We just have to accept that. We're not going to play a worse player. We're not going to play like a worse player. No, rotation doesn't mean anything. You guys don't understand the point of rotation. You're talking about rotation for rotation's sake. This is where fans lose it. This is where Player FC shows its head so much, okay? Why do you rotate? Do you actually think that the managers are rotating players to make them happy to give a 20-year-old minutes? That's not why. Do you think that Lenny is getting rotated in because of any other reason except for that game?
We're getting Anderson, according to Mitten, or Bailba, according to Indy, in Jan.
We'll talk about that in a second, Tubbs. Talk to that in a second, Tubbs. Rotation is for a matchup. When you make rotations, when a manager is changing and rotating players, it's because they're feeling they're going to give them the best chance to win that game. It's tactical, it's strategic, it's something like, or it's a fitness issue. There's no reason to rotate Bruno right now, 1 game a week, because he does not feel that Kobbie's going to give us a better chance to win than Bruno Fernandes. That's it. Why would he bench Bruno if Bruno's going to help us win games? And then the same people who are saying that Mainoo should play will be jumping down his throat the minute we don't win games. We've already seen it. You don't just rotate and make your team objectively worse for no reason. Okay? He will be rotated when the feeling is that the fitness is not there.
If part of the Kobbie thing is people seem to think it will be the death of the academy, like we would never have another youngest come through.
I think there's that to a degree, but we will, and we have more coming through. And Bruno's been improving, and Bruno's been growing, and things like that. You know, and it is what it is. You know, but that's the reason for rotation. You don't just do it, not in the Premier League. We're not in other competitions. Where did we rotate? We had the League Cup to rotate. And what happens? We got knocked out. No, I said he's rotation. He's rotation. He is a rotational player. When we rotate, he will play. When we rotate, he will play. We don't have a need to rotate at the moment. And Kobbie plays almost every single game as a bench player. He comes off every single game. The idea that he's not being selected is just silly. But why would he bench Bruno in the Premier League right now? Like, what reason does he have to bench Bruno right now in the Premier League? Imagine if he just benched him in the next game. 90% of people would be going, why? Why did you bench Bruno that game? Why? Let's take a look. Kobbie played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row until this weekend. 7 games in a row. So yes, he is being rotated. When we need energy, when we need legs, when we want to make a change, he plays. I wanted Bruno sold. I did. I'm not the manager. I get it. Right now, he feels he's going to give him a better chance. But I also don't want Bruno sold if we're not going to get a better replacement in. You know? When he rotates players, you don't use the Premier League for rotation. Not 10 games in. You don't use the Premier League to rotate 10 games in. That's not the point of rotation. There will be rotation as we get into the festive period, as we get into all of this. There will be rotation, and Kobbie will play some games. And as we get into the second half of the year, he will also play some games. But the fact of the matter is, we play 1 game a week. There was never going to be enough games for everybody. Look at Joshua Zirkzee. Same issue. He's playing even less at the moment. Okay? That's the reality of it. But it doesn't matter. You can't just say, so we loan Kobbie, then what? Then we have literally nobody. What happens if Bruno does get injured? What happens if something like that does happen? Oh, well, we need to make Kobbie happy, so we're just going to loan out all our players and have 12 players and fill the bench with 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds. That's not how it works. Players have to be okay with that. They have to be okay with being on a bench, and we have to be able to have a
player
bench.
Who isn't good enough for around £50 million to allow us to buy a midfielder who is good enough sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah. Yeah, if that's the case, it does. Even if we get 2 midfielders next year, we should keep Kobbie as a rotation option. We should, if he'll be willing to stay, because he's going to be rotation again. He's going to be rotation again next year. You know, that's just what's going to happen. And we're going to have more games, and so there will be more minutes for everybody. So it's up to him. That's the reality of it. And it's an intense debate. And it's like, I rate Kobbie. I want Kobbie to play more. I like Kobbie. I think that he has a good future at the club. I think he can develop into the right guy. But it's up to him too. It's up to him too. For any United player complaining about minutes, maybe he should have played better last season. Every player in that dressing room is responsible for where we finished and where we ended up outside of Europe. Every one of them. Not in all equal shares and things like that, but every one of them. Every one of them played for everyone. A lot of the players in there played last year. We finished 15th. Everybody's responsible for that. These things don't happen in a vacuum. Nobody's a victim. You know, these players aren't victims of their circumstances, right? They have the ability to influence and change things. That's all. So we'll leave it at that. But that's the reality. So players have to accept it, and that's part of the culture as well. That's part of the culture aspect of football, you know, is having a dressing room where people aren't unhappy the minute they're not playing. That is a cultural issue, you know, that is a problem in that situation. You know, that is where we're at. You have to have players who are committed to the club, not their own self-interests too. And that's a bit of a concern as well. So we'll see. Everybody has to be committed. So that's Kobbie's situation, a very complex one where the club would like to keep him, but if he's not going to be happy in a rotational role, then that's going to be on him because he's going to be rotation next year too, pretty much 100%. That's the truth of it, right? So, but they don't want to let him leave before them. They would like him to play. They would like him to stay. They would like when there's more games that he'll be a more integral part of the team. And certainly he's going to play over the next couple of weeks. Following that, we have Bruno. And Bruno's situation is always like still caught in the middle, right? It's a bit of an unknown situation. It's a bit of an unknown situation here because it's up to him. He's very clearly not given the club his full commitment and certainty. Lacey goal, 1-0, yeah. The whole problem is because Southgate jumped the gun and took him to the Euros and derailed the following season of fitness. Well, that didn't help, but the other aspect that is like... The other aspect is that, it's real, the idea that Ten Hag did a really good job with him, I think is hilarious. He was getting worse under Ten Hag, and by the time he was finished, he was playing in a deep role next to Eriksen, getting himself injured because of how he was being deployed. But I guess those minutes were valuable despite it just shredding his hamstrings. Whatever, you know what I mean? I just have a different view on it. I think that he got way too many minutes in way too difficult a situation, way too quickly, and now there's an entitlement that exists. The same thing we did to Garnacho. I don't like that. I'm not saying he's the same player, but I don't like those. I don't like how we dealt with things that created these kinds of situation. That's what I don't like. So, but it is what it is. He's a very good player. So hopefully we move on, and he can be a part of the team. Bruno, that's obviously a big question. If Bruno's going to stay and we're going to buy somebody, of course, it makes it very difficult for Kobbie. Bruno, it's up to him. The club are going to leave it up to him again next summer. But what is going to happen is he will either be sold or probably get a new, slightly extended contract on lower wages. It's going to be one of those two next summer, very, very likely. With Ugarte, it sort of leaves him as a funny one because he's not going to push to leave. He's committed. He's always going to help. But he's not been that good. At the same time, they can't replace 3 or 4 midfielders in one summer. And that's not going to happen. They will be, obviously, if he doesn't have a good year, building up over the course of the season, doing better and better. Then obviously there's a good chance that he will be sold, that they'll at least make him available, see what happens there. But it's also going to be dependent on what happens with these other players and things like that. He could very well be a utility player, especially if they're not going to be able to sell him for too much. In some ways, he could sort of slide under the radar as a utility player that stays for some time. You know what I mean? He could well be in that kind of situation too. So I don't know what's going to happen there. His, I think, is more like a domino effect of the other 3 midfielders and what happens there. But there's a really, really, really it's just really complicated with the other 3. I think Casemiro, based on the current situation, still most likely to leave. Bruno, it's up to him. Kobbie, it's also to a degree up to him. And Ugarte, it's an unknown. Let's move on to Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson, as I said a few weeks ago, was definitely a player who United was flying up the list for United and others. Definitely a player who has eyes on making a switch to a step up to a bigger club. Now, can United get him? It's early. United are going to have to do a good convincing job. And I think that United are going to have to do a good job convincing players. Now, they did so with Cunha. They did so with Mbeumo. We know they can convince players, especially in the Premier League. I think the league position is going to matter. And I want to back this up a little bit by just saying I know we have this thing like, well, players should want to join United no matter what. Okay. However, what is United when you're looking at it? Is there a project there that is worth building upon?
Let's be honest, we're getting no main targets in Jan.
Yeah.
Maybe LWB if we're lucky, but midfield defo needs to be priority for
totally.
the summer.
Totally, Stuart. Exactly true. Totally correct. It's going to be nearly impossible to get a midfielder, a top midfielder in January. Maybe we can get something else. We'll talk about Gallagher. But yeah, it's different. He is a Newcastle guy, Anderson. But like, how do we explain this point here, correctly, right? Like, we all agree, I think, we want players who want to be at United. We talked about this, that they've turned other clubs down, Mbumo, Cunha, etc. They want to be at United even though we finished 15th. However, there is a difference between joining a club in 15th when they finish 15th and joining a club when they finish 15th and then the next year kind of goes to shit too. You know what I mean? We do need to show some of these players that we convinced and new ones that we're talking to that we are on our way back up. We don't have to be in Champions League. I don't think to convince Anderson, Wharton, etc. I don't think that's true. I think any of them, if they're like, well, no, I need Champions League this season, then whatever. We've been through that, even though we might get Champions League anyway. But we do need to be able to show them that we're on our way in the right direction, that the club is being fixed, that the club is going the right way, that the club is progressing as a whole. They need to be able to see that, of course. And if we can do that, if we do progress the right way, then I think we can convince guys like Anderson. And I think that we have a good case here. Like I said, I know there's been contacts with different players. We know, I think Wharton and Anderson are probably top of the list right now with Baleba. There being some concerns. And there's going to be a fight over them. But I think people will see, as long as we're sure and we don't have disasters by the end of the season, that we're on our way, there's a role there. And I think Anderson is honestly perfect. I mean, watching that game at the weekend was like crazy to me, and looking at him, because I was just like, this is a player, you know what I mean? Like, this is a player that could wear the shirt, that could do the job. That's what I saw with him there. And I think United are incredibly impressed with him as well. So right now, if you're to ask me, based on everything I've heard, and I spoke about this in the last few weeks, and it's interesting to see the names be coming up the last few days, and from people like Andy Mitt and all that, I don't think mentioned by accident, even if some things are sort of out of context. I think Elliot Anderson and Adam Wharton are the two top targets at the moment for summer, and that might be viewed as the midfield of the future, is the two of them together. That's what I think is possible in there. Now, if Anderson, is moving over, then, and Bruno is staying or something like that, then he could still play. The dynamics of our midfield can still adjust. Hold on. So, yeah. Then I think there's different dynamics that could work in the midfield as well. I do think there's different dynamics that could work. A lot of things could change a little bit, within all of this. For sure. So this some of these dynamics could change, but we do want to. So the question becomes: do we go for Anderson and Wharton as two big midfielders for the long term? I think it's seriously possible. Alternatively, it could well be, and it really kind of depends on Bruno and his situation. Whether maybe you remember I've always said that second midfielder we go for very much probably depends on Bruno in terms of, are we going to go for a younger one like a Buwadi or something like that, or anything else. The point on the running and Wharton is being incredibly disingenuous. Wharton has the best passing range in the midfield. Again, you have to have a range or you have to have legs, not neither. They're very, very different players. Very, very different players. That's where the argument, like I said, you're losing it on that argument. You're completely losing it on that argument because it becomes disingenuous. So they're very, very different. I would like us to go big on both. I think ideally we go big on both. We get two big midfielders in there and all of that. Is Amorim changing his playing style from what he did at Sporting by playing Bruno on that double pivot as a DLP? So I mentioned earlier that somebody sent me something talking about, Amorim's ideas and instructions. And the biggest thing is out of possession. In possession, the fact that he has players who can pass the ball is better. One of the things he definitely commented on and definitely changed a bit is when he got Yeoman compared to Paulinho and Ugarte. Because Yeoman had a much better passing range, he utilized that more. So it's not like he refuses for those midfielders to pass the ball and progress the play. But if you look at when we've been best with Bruno and Casemiro when they are passing the ball, it's mostly still big switches out wide. It's mostly still sending the ball into these wide kinds of areas and things like that. So yeah, I think he's always been flexible in how the ball is progressed up the pitch and who can do different things and all of that in terms of on the ball. It's out of possession that he's more uncompromising in terms of what he's going to want from them if he can get it from them, if we have it. In possession, the bonus is great. So we'll see. So we'll see what happens there. I think the second midfielder decision is very much up in the air, and it's going to be a situation where they go, you know what? We want, let's just get the best top player we can in here. And then the second one will work on fixing the midfield dynamics based on what happens and adding to it and getting whatever we're missing. Because it's also because there's so much competition. You don't want to say, oh, well, we need a 6 more than we need Anderson, who's an 8. We need what Wharton has more than we need Anderson, who's an 8. And then we're going to be competing for both, and we'll figure it out. I think where we look at this is we're going to compete with both. For Anderson, for Wharton, we're going to be in the market. We're going to be in discussions. We're going to be talking to both because maybe we lose on one. Maybe we don't get one. Maybe one turns us down. Well, we don't want to miss out on either. You know what I mean? So there's also that factor in it, and everything. So, that is a big part of it as well. Then I want to talk about Conor Gallagher because this is a funny one. Would Wharton and Anderson be the perfect midfield combination? Yeah, I think so. I do think so. What's with the Sully Caicedo retweet? What do you mean? What am I missing? What did I miss? Hold on, let me look. Still the same situation.
Is Alpha CAA Stella in disguise? Disguised face emoji.
Maybe. The player would love to join MUFC and his contract won't be a problem. Now it's up to the club. It's not a done deal yet. I don't know. Maybe it's just how I can ask him. I'm curious what he's talking about. I really want to know. Let me ask him. I'll message him. see if he tells me if he's just messing around or if there's something he wants to share. I'll find out. I'll find out. I don't think we want Caicedo right now. I'm not sure he's saying any of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think he's saying any of that. But yeah, so then let's talk about Conor Gallagher. Let's talk maybe Orozco. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Let's talk about Conor Gallagher, because I know there's going to be a big Champions League game starting in 15 minutes, so I want to get through the rest of this stuff. Because Conor Gallagher, I've been thinking about, we tried for him at the end of the year. We want him. We're still interested. Could be possible in January, and I'm thinking why. And then I was thinking the other day when I looked at where he was playing last season, and thinking, last season he essentially played as a left mid. He essentially played as a left mid. And here's his heat map, by the way, because it's just interesting to look at this. This is where he played last season. All right. Now, I could make a case here that Conor Gallagher's got high energy, high engine, high work rate, and could play, has English experience, and could play at wingback on that left side as an option. A flexible option who can play on multiple sides and multiple situations and things like that. But I could make a case that Conor Gallagher could be a wingback, okay, in this system. I can make that case as an inverted, right-footed wingback that could do a hell of a lot better job than Dalot could. Better defending, better going forward. He's good on the ball. He has English experience. I can make a case that he could be that guy, that he could do that role. I can do it. What happened? No, he's right-footed. If we can, he's not crazy. He's right-footed. He's not a crazy player by any stretch of the imagination, all right? But he is a good utility player that a lot of managers like and rate, and he can play in a lot of different zones and in a lot of different positions. And I was thinking, it doesn't really make sense for him to be in the midfield, because in the midfield, we've got all these options. We just had this debate on Kobbie. Like, if we get him, are we going to bench Kobbie even further, deeper down the bench? For Conor Gallagher, doesn't really make sense to me. And so I was like, well, what the hell? Like, what could this be? And then I looked at his numbers and I was like, all right, he's decent at key passes. Like, forward passing percentages, key passes. I don't know what his crossing numbers look like. Hold on. I don't know if he ever crosses the ball or not from that side. But I feel like I can make the case that Gallagher could be a wingback for us in a temporary, situation, because I look at everything and I go, we're struggling to figure out how to get, we're struggling to figure out how to get a wingback and who we could even get. And then I'm like, all right, well, he's got some decent attacking stats for a midfielder. Let's look at it for crossing and things like that. Okay. He's got a decent number of assists, decent at passing into the penalty area. His crossing is okay. He's quite creative. He's very combative. He's a good presser. A lot of tackles won. A lot of ball recoveries won. I can see a world. Yeah, Llorente did kind of the same thing there, changing mids to fullbacks, and I start to go, maybe. in a temporary situation as another option. You get what I'm saying? Another option, because realize one thing too. You can, like, I'm not saying he's just a wingback, but I'm looking at where he might be able to see as a utility player. He could play there. He can play in the 10s. He can play in the midfield. He could even play on the right. So you get a bunch of options from a player that has experience, that has engine and intelligence. And all I'm going to say right now is that if they want him, I trust them. I see him in a way a little bit like Mason Mount, okay? Intelligent player who's got English experience, a really good engine, and coaches really seem to like him. So maybe there's something in that. We did try, even though it was on loan, probably because we don't want to pay the kind of wages he's on. But I don't think Atletico want to pay the kind of wages he's on either. If it's January, you know what I mean? And we can't get our other options, because this is the issue we're talking about in January. If it's January and we don't have a ton of options, maybe we can just get someone to help us, to help the team as a utility player and to cover different positions. Maybe it's Casemiro at times. Maybe it's the left wing back at times. Maybe it's the right wing back at times. Maybe it's in one of the 10s. I don't know. But there was a reason that they liked him. And yeah, he's intense. He's a good presser. He's sort of a simple player in that respect. I don't know. I'm not against it. And I guess what I'm saying is, my stance at this point in time is, if they're for it, I'm gonna trust them, because they seem to know what they're doing. I think their recruitment is good. I think that their eyes are good. I think that who they've been getting are good. If they see something that they like, that they think could be worth it, I'm all for it. And obviously, look, the money factor and things like that, they're not going to sign up a utility player for $250,000 a week or something, but it's whatever. But yeah, it's just interesting in that respect. I feel like there's something we can do with this. You know what I mean? I think there's something we can do with this. So,
if Ineos want to win the PL by 2028, is Gallagher really that big of an upgrade from Dalot or Ugarte/Mainoo? Sounds very short-sighted if true.
I don't think that's the idea of them being an upgrade on him. I think it's who can we obtain in January? And again, we were looking at a loan with an option. Okay, that's what we were looking at, a loan with an option. Who can we obtain in January that could assist us in getting back where we could be, that could be in the future a squad player? Because we need to move on a lot of players, and a lot of players will be leaving, over the course of the next couple of windows as well. There's going to be more. We're going to be losing a fair number of players, right? So we're going to need a bigger, deeper squad in some respects for European competitions and things like that as well. So I'm saying, if we need reinforcements in January, right now, not like this is some long-term thing that's going to screw everybody else over, but if we need some sort of reinforcement in January, I can see a use case for Conor Gallagher. I can see a situation where he could provide value to the team in different positions that could help us. That's what I see from him. And I think that has some merit to it, in terms of, just because there's not going to be a ton of other options available come January. It's not going to be easy to recruit. We know that in the summer windows, when we're going to mostly get our main midfielders, that the wingbacks are going to be nigh impossible. Someone like Semenyo, I don't think it's even possible right now. I don't think you can get Minte out of Brighton and there's so many things in there that it's just, I can see the use of a utility player, and sometimes in January, that's what you need if we cannot get our main targets. So that's my curiosity about it. That's all. It's a curiosity of if this is an option, that we consider. And I can see some of the use. Yeah, and it's being looked at as a loan, so with maybe an option in it. So to see what he could provide. Can he come back to England? What could he do? Can he be a useful player? It would be good to have a squad. It'd be good to have a squad. So I'm just thinking about it because come January, even though we want to do business, even though we want a lot of like, we want these top players and we have major targets, I think it's going to be hard to pull that off for some of them. So we might be looking at something like Gallagher. I am in that respect, you know, and so I'm keeping an open mind. I trust them under recruitment. If they decide to make a move for him, we'll see. But like I said the other day, I'm going to keep looking into these alternatives and thinking about who could happen. Start to think about, you know, who could there be that could be an alternative that we could get in the market for the, at least, even if it's just temporary, you know, but that has use that maybe we're trialing. I don't know yet, and we'll find out, but this could be one of them. Okay, I'm going to end it here because I think the next match is about to start in a few minutes. So thank you all for hanging out with me today on today's live. Thank you for the gifted memberships from Stuart. Thank you for all the donations, the questions, the things like that that you've put in. Thank you for the lively debate. We'll be back tomorrow, probably with a live looking at a few other things. In the meantime, I'm going to keep digging into everything that I can. Okay, thanks for hanging out with me today. Enjoy the whatever football you watch this afternoon or evening, and I will catch you all later. Have a good one, everybody. Thank you, and make sure to smash a like on your way out. We can get up to 300 or so. That would be great. It means a lot, but thank you all. See you later. Have a good one.